In May 2018, a Texas Ranger walked into a California prison to interview an inmate about a cold case murder from 1994. The prisoner was serving 3 consecutive life sentences. An old man, a nobody, another face in the system. The Ranger sits down, introducing himself. The 2 men start talking. By the time the Ranger leaves that prison, the old man has confessed to 93 murders. 93. Spread across 19 states. Over 35 years. More victims than Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy combined. The prisoner's name was Samuel Little. And until that confession in 2018, you'd probably never heard of him. That's exactly how he wanted it. This is the story of the man who became America's deadliest serial killer by being invisible. The man who understood that in America, some people matter more than others, and he killed the ones who didn't. The killer came into this world in Reynolds, Georgia, a forgotten speck on the map about 100 miles south of Atlanta. His mother was a teenager. Some say she gave birth while sitting in a jail cell. Whether that's true or not doesn't really matter. What matters is that from the moment he took his first breath, nobody wanted him. His mother shipped him off to Lorain, Ohio, to be raised by his grandmother. Records list his mother's whereabouts as unknown. That's what the boy learned early on. People can just disappear. People can just be nothing. By 13, he was arrested for theft. They sent him to Boys Industrial School, a reform school that didn't reform anyone. He was reported 47 times for disciplinary problems in just a year and a half. By the time he left, he was angrier, smarter, and more dangerous. Somewhere along the way, he discovered true crime magazines. Stories about murder, about strangulation, about how killers got caught and how they didn't. He studied these magazines like textbooks. Learning, planning, fantasizing, high school dropout, petty criminal, drifter. The man moved through America like smoke, never staying long enough to be noticed, never mattering enough to be remembered. He'd work odd jobs when he needed cash. He'd steal when he didn't. And he discovered something useful. If you keep moving, nobody connects the dots. State to state, city to city, crime to crime, woman to woman. Between the 1950s and 2012, the killer was arrested more than 100 times. Read that again. More than 100 arrests. His criminal record read like a horror movie preview. And despite all of this, despite being arrested over 100 times across multiple states, the killer spent fewer than 10 years actually in prison. 10 years for 100 arrests. Let that reality sit with you for a moment. Mississippi, 1982, arrested and charged with murder. A grand jury declined to indict. Florida, 1982, tried for murder. Found not guilty because the jury didn't trust the witnesses. Women like the victim. Women from the margins. California, October 1984, arrested for kidnapping, beating, and strangling a woman. She survived. He barely got punished. California, November 1984. Police find him in his car with an unconscious woman in the back seat, beaten, strangled, in the exact same area as the previous attack. The pattern was screaming, but nobody was listening. Samuel Little understood something fundamental about American justice. Not all victims are treated equally. He targeted sex workers, drug addicts, homeless women, women living in poverty, women whose families didn't have lawyers, women whose deaths could be explained away as overdoses, as the consequences of that lifestyle, as nobody's fault and everybody's fault all at once. Many of his victims' deaths were originally ruled overdoses, or attributed to accidental or undetermined causes. Some bodies were never found. For many years, the killer believed he would not be caught because he thought no one was accounting for his victims, an FBI crime analyst later said. He was right. Nobody was counting. During his various prison stints, the killer discovered boxing. He was good at it. Really good. He could have been a professional prize fighter, some said. But boxing taught him more than just how to fight. It taught him anatomy, pressure points, how long it takes for someone to lose consciousness, how much force is needed to break a windpipe, where to hit to maximize damage. The killer was learning to kill efficiently. His method was disturbingly consistent. He would cruise areas known for sex work and drug activity. He'd look for women who were already vulnerable, drunk, high, desperate. He'd offer them money, drugs, or just a ride somewhere safe. Once they were in his car, he'd drive to somewhere isolated. Then he'd attack, sometimes with his fists first, using those boxing skills to knock them unconscious. But always, he would strangle them with his bare hands. Before his first killing, the New Year's Eve 1970 murder in North Miami Beach, Florida, the killer said he knew he was going to choke her. The FBI would later give him a nickname, the choke and stroke killer. He became sexually aroused during the strangulations. Sometimes he would masturbate while watching them die. This wasn't crime. This was his sex life. The bodies were left in places where they'd eventually be found, but where the deaths wouldn't raise questions. An alley in a bad neighborhood, a vacant lot, the side of a highway, places where another dead woman wouldn't shock anyone. And because his method was strangulation, no gunshots, no stab wounds, many deaths were ruled as natural causes or overdoses. The evidence of murder was subtle. And the investigators? They weren't looking that hard. For decades, the killer moved through America's shadows, killing women nobody was looking for, leaving bodies nobody investigated, committing perfect murders simply by choosing perfect victims. Invisible women, an invisible killer. He said he started killing in 1970, on New Year's Eve in Miami. It was like drugs, he told Holland. I came to like it. His last was in 2005, he said, in Tupelo, Mississippi. 1971 Miami, Florida. A mother of two from Massachusetts. She'd come down to Florida for a fresh start. Instead, she met the killer in a bar on New Year's Eve. She became his first victim. For 3 decades, her son believed his mother had abandoned him. Only later did he learn the truth. She was murdered by a stranger in a bar. Throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, the killer crisscrossed America like a plague. Florida, California, Georgia, Ohio, Texas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, Kentucky. Some we know by name. Others remain nameless, forgotten. There were survivors too. Women who fought back. Women who lived to tell their stories. Women who were kidnapped, beaten, and nearly strangled. They escaped with their lives, but not their peace of mind. These women tried to warn the system. They testified. They pointed at the killer and said, "This man tried to kill me." And the system shrugged. By 2012, the killer was living in a homeless shelter in Kentucky. The killing had stopped years earlier. His body, ravaged by diabetes and time, couldn't handle the violence anymore. He was just another forgotten old man waiting to die. Then he got arrested on a drug charge. Routine. Nothing special. Except they took his DNA. And suddenly, 3 cold case murders from Los Angeles in the 1980s came back to life. 3 women. All strangled. All dumped in South Los Angeles. All unsolved for nearly 30 years. In 2014, a jury found the killer guilty on all 3 counts. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without parole. He screamed in court, "I didn't do it." But the DNA didn't care what he said. Now we return to where our story began. May 2018, California State Prison. The Texas Ranger. The Ranger wasn't there about the Los Angeles murders. Those were solved. He was there about a murder in Odessa, Texas, in 1994. But the Ranger did something different from other investigators. He didn't treat the killer like a monster. He treated him like a man. They talked about Texas, about sodas they liked, about childhood nicknames. The Ranger called him by the name his grandmother used to call him when he was just a boy. And after building that trust, after making the killer feel seen for maybe the first time in his life, the Ranger asked the question, "How many people have you killed?" The killer paused. Then he said he'd stopped counting around 84, but he could try to remember them all. Over about 700 hours of interviews, he gave details from scores of killings that only a murderer would know. The killer didn't just confess. He reminisced. He told stories. He relived his murders with the enthusiasm of an old man remembering his glory days. 93 confessions total. 93 women he said he'd killed between 1970 and 2005. The FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program went to work. They had to verify each confession, cross-reference with unsolved murders in the right time frames, locations little was known to be, physical descriptions, causes of death. 60 have been confirmed. The others are still being investigated. Here's where the story takes a turn into the truly haunting. During his confessions, investigators gave him paper and colored pencils. The killer had learned to draw during his first prison stint decades earlier. Now, he started drawing his victims. Women he'd killed 30, 40 years ago, he could draw from memory with stunning accuracy. Their faces, their hairstyles, their clothing, the expressions they wore. Nothing he's ever said has been proven to be wrong or false, the Texas Ranger told a news program in 2019. The drawings were so accurate that families identified their missing loved ones from sketches done decades after their deaths. He drew them lovingly, tenderly, like they mattered to him, because they did. These women were his life's work, his collection, his trophies. Each confession rippled across America. Police departments that had given up hope suddenly had answers. Families finally knew what happened to their loved one. For some families, it brought closure. For others, it reopened wounds that had never really healed. One victim's son spent his childhood believing his mother abandoned him. Then he learned she'd been murdered on New Year's Eve 1970. She hadn't left him. She'd been taken from him. In November 2020, just weeks before he died, the killer confessed to 2 murders in Florida from the 1990s. When investigators matched his confessions to the evidence, they realized something horrifying. They had convicted the wrong man. An innocent person had been sitting in prison for murders Samuel Little committed. Even in his confessions, he was still destroying lives. A former FBI agent was asked if something like this could happen again today. His answer? Of course. Samuel Little killed 93 women over 35 years. He was arrested over 100 times. He was tried for murder twice in the 1980s and walked free both times. How? The answer is as simple as it is ugly. It's possible to get away with murder in America if you kill the right people. Or, rather, the wrong people. The women Samuel Little killed were poor. Many were black. Many were sex workers or drug addicts. Many were homeless. Women whose families didn't have resources to hire private investigators. Women whose deaths were convenient to explain away. Think about the resources that go into catching killers when their victims are middle-class suburbanites. The FBI task forces, the media attention, the public outcry, the political pressure. Now think about how many of Samuel Little's victims were buried in paupers' graves with no investigation at all. He killed more people than Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, and the Zodiac Killer combined. And almost nobody knows his name. That tells you everything you need to know about whose lives matter in America. This is about a system that decides, consciously or not, that some murders aren't worth solving, that some victims aren't worth the man-hours, that some lives are disposable. Samuel Little understood this instinctively. They were broke and homeless, and they walked right into my spider web, he said. He hunted in the shadows because he knew nobody was watching the shadows. On December 30th, 2020, the killer died in a Los Angeles hospital. Complications from diabetes and heart disease. Natural causes, they said. He was gone. The most prolific serial killer in American history, dead from the same boring diseases that kill thousands of people every day. Until the very end, the killer never showed remorse. In his final interviews, he spoke about the murders with nostalgia. Like an old athlete remembering championship games. Like a soldier remembering battles. He didn't see the victims. He saw conquests. He didn't see tragedy. He saw success. Of his 93 confessed murders, many victims remain unidentified. We don't know their names. We don't know where their families are. We don't even know if anyone is looking for them. To this day, the FBI continues investigating the killer's confessions. More cases may be solved. More families may get answers. More names may be recovered from the darkness. But for now, dozens of his victims remain what they were in life: invisible. The killer is dead, but the world that allowed him to kill for 35 years is very much alive. Right now, there are cold cases gathering dust in police departments across America. Unsolved murders of people whose lives were considered not worth investigating thoroughly. Right now, there are serial killers operating in plain sight, choosing victims they know the system doesn't value. The horror of this story isn't just that he existed. The horror is how easy we made it for him. Every time a sex worker's death was written off as an overdose without a thorough investigation. Every time a homeless woman disappeared and nobody filed a missing persons report. Every time the killer was arrested, charged, and released to kill again. Every time the system decided that some lives matter less than others. We handed him victims. 60 confirmed victims. Each one was a real person with a real life that was stolen from them. Some we know by name now. Many remain Jane Does, still unidentified decades later. And dozens more whose names we still don't know. They were daughters, mothers, sisters, friends. They had stories. They had dreams. They mattered, even if nobody else thought so. The measure of a society is found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. This killer showed us how America treats its vulnerable. And we should be ashamed. If this story moved you, if it made you think, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're diving deep into true crime cases that deserve to be told differently. Stories that challenge us, that force us to ask the hard questions. Drop a comment below. Did you know about Samuel Little before this video? Why do you think his case isn't as famous as other serial killers? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.